recording yet. But yeah, so the assignment is probably done. I think the solutions also we will send you pretty soon, surely by the next class. And so I guess all of you are there on the WhatsApp group as well. So there was this interesting exchange that happened quite late in the night yesterday. So did you guys see that? Yeah, did people see that? See some exchange between Chitradeep, myself, and I think Rohan also joined in for one comment. What?
Yes, sir. At least I
Yeah,
did.
yeah. Obviously, Chitradeep, the people who wrote it obviously saw. But yeah, so the comment that came was interesting in the sense that what we actually have for the Fresnel reflection coefficients and all is a dependence on the incidence angle, which is not really the polarization angle. So what I think what Rohan and Chitradeep were sort of trying to mention was that can so Chitradeep I think forwarded this wiki link where you have this series of reflectance versus angle of incidence for different kind of refractive index ratios. So there the assumption has been. So I'll start writing. Actually, let me share the whiteboard. I think these are interesting things to write. Sorry, yes. Yeah. So basically, right. So Fresnel relations for unpolarized light continued. So dependence on of reflectance on theta I. That is the question. Okay. Now, my argument has basically been that, acha, so what that the WikiLeaks sort of says is that they consider the reflectance as some kind of a superposition of something like this, something like this. So this I consider to be a problem because for unpolarized light, it is basically random polarization.
Yeah, so this
So
is a doubt. Like, is this mixed polarization or unpolarized light? Like,
unpolarized, see, that is the whole point. Priyanuj, that is the whole point. I am not saying this is mixed polarization.
no,
I am
if
saying
this
this
is
is
unpolarized, but there is
unpolarized light.
a,
So
but
this assumption I don't think is correct for unpolarized light.
yeah,
So I do
and
not think this is
I
correct.
for the equation they give, I don't think that represents unpolarized light.
Exactly. I completely agree. What I believe is that unpolarized light is completely random polarization. And random polarization, you cannot define any degree of polarization because this is basically saying that this is basically nothing but 45-degree, right? So that is not what unpolarized light is, right? So this is not correct. Okay. However, there is one point which I think we sort of glossed over in the last class, and that is when you go from denser to rarer. That is when you have Ni greater than Nt. Then from the ray picture itself, you have the concept of critical angle, right? So you basically have this coming, and this angle is higher, and when this angle is higher, this theta I is more than theta t, theta I is greater than greater than theta c or equal to greater equal theta c. then of course your theta t will, from the ray picture itself, it will be pi by 2, or like, imaginary. Basically cos theta t becomes imaginary. So that obviously, in that particular case, you will surely have a dependence. I don't deny that, because that does not assume any polarization. That's the ray picture itself. That is just assuming, from even Snell's law, we know that that is bound to happen. Okay, so that thing is an exception. So there, the R reflectance will indeed will depend on theta in that case, for sure. That is when theta I greater equal theta c. That we don't see. Please remember one thing, guys. The whole premise of this, Fresnel relations essentially is on the, based on the polarization of light. So if it's not and I think in the ray picture, I mean, the only thing that is sort of interesting comes when you basically have this condition, met, where your incident angle is equal or more than critical angle. We have total internal reflection. And that there is, it's like a step jump, right? So the reflectance will suddenly jump up. Hmm? And interestingly, we'll not have any, very little transmission, almost zero transmission in that case. But I really, I'm getting sort of more invested into this. I really would appreciate if any of you could do some experiment. Maybe I can ask, people in ISER, maybe in my lab as well, to try to do some stuff and check if, one can try to attempt to get some kind of an understanding, at least experimentally, on what is happening in this case. But what one, almost, I mean, you cannot assume that unpolarized light is a superposition of, P and S, because that basically does not make it different from 45 degrees, and that kind of violates the whole premise, because that essentially, unpolarized light means the field vector direction is random. Okay, so one cannot just assume such a simple definition for unpolarized light and go ahead. Okay, so this, it's an interesting discussion still, and I think you will appreciate that, even this, this seemingly sort of, straightforward, concept. I mean, well, this is this. I mean, just polarized light. Actually, this has a lot of interesting consequences. By the way, can you hear me? Because my connection just went for a peep. Am I there with you? Yeah.
So
Okay,
you
I'm
said
there.
that
Yeah. Okay. So let us go on to this one. We'll finish the optics of metals today. So essentially, what we the basic difference between metals and dielectrics, of course, is that uh, metals have very high conductivity, which means that the J term comes in, and they have a finite absorption, which is very, very, very important, and which was something which we did not consider in the case of dielectrics. So I think last class where we ended was where we basically defined, we understood the significance of K1 and K2. But we will start today, and this is all very straightforward. We have already listed down a series of, you know, characteristics that we sort of intuitively could conclude about metals. Today, we will confirm them quantitatively. So, my first question to you would be, what would you think would be the sort of, the quantitative description of a substance being a metal or a dielectric? What, I mean, of course, you will say that probably you have, yeah, let me see, let me just see. See, I mean, when can you say a medium, that a medium is conducting? When can you say that a medium is conducting? When do you think you can say that? I mean, can you, so remember we were writing down the Maxwell's equations, and the big change that came there, of course, is obviously the the what what was the big change that came? What was the big change that came when we were writing down the Maxwell equations compared to that of a dielectric?
It was
What?
conductance.
Yeah, so the a finite, a large value of sigma. I mean J coming in, right? J, right? So we can simply say, I think I mean I sort of was expecting this answer from you. So it's very simple, right? Basically, when the conduction current is much greater than the displacement current. This is the prime requirement of a medium to be a metal. This is the main requirement. The conduction current has to be much greater than the displacement current. What does this quantitatively sort of translate to? Nothing but this, right? Mu sigma epsilon is much greater than mu epsilon del E del T. Remember, conduction current is not D, it is del D del T. Basically, del D del T, right? So the this is the one sort of condition for a substance to be a metal, right? And what can we write? You know, the del E del T from Maxwell's equations is actually what? Del E del T, we typically, if we take a plane wave solution, what do we take del E del T to be? Guys, please, I am again talking in a room myself. Please have some empathy. Please answer. When I take Maxwell's equations, del E del T is typically written as what? Are?
Sir,
Assuming plane wave solution,
I omega times E.
omega, right? So basically, in terms, if I look at just numbers, I essentially have sigma, this thing is greater than this, right? Because this is nothing but I omega, which basically means that sigma has to be greater than epsilon omega. This is the basic
Omega E,
condition.
sir.
Sorry?
Omega E.
No.
There will be an E. Mu epsilon omega E.
Yeah. Right. This part, yes. Yes. Sure. Yes, correct. E, which means that you have sigma greater than epsilon omega. This is the critical condition for a substance being a metal. Okay, and that essentially means, which means that we just saw that, you know, k square from the previous class, we had seen that k square was nothing but this, right? This one, right? Sure, right? So what does this mean? That this is, so we can easily understand that if I have this one, then this is purely imaginary, because this term is much larger. Is this clear? Is this step clear? How did I write this step?
Yes, sir.
This is clear, right? What will you do to has anybody any doubt about this step? See, if you don't say, I cannot see you, right? So I'm assuming you are understanding anything, everything. You don't understand, please just say it. Oh, this thing, I don't know why the hell. Anyway, so I assume that everybody understands this step, which means that I can write down that k square is nothing but I mu sigma omega, and k is then I mu sigma omega half, which means now this root I, what can I write this in term of exponential?
E to the power I pi by 4. So it should be 1 by root 2 plus I
Absolutely
by
right.
root.
Absolutely right. E to the I pi by 4, which means this is nothing but 1 by root 2 plus I by root 2. Right? Which means that oh, which means that basically I can write my k1 plus I k2 as 1 plus I mu sigma omega by 2 half, and that basically means that k1 equal to k2 equal to mu sigma omega by 2 to the power half. This is a very, very important result. Okay, this is a very, very important result, and we actually use this. So one of the main sort of conclusions, I mean, consequences of of a material being a metal is the is basically the group velocity, phase the phase velocity, and the other thing that we derive from here. So what? Yeah, okay. Let me see. So what else do you think? Let me just start a new page.
Sir, why
So
didn't
yeah,
we use this last
right.
time?
What? Huh? So tell me.
Why didn't we use this condition of conduction current much greater than displacement current when we derived this last class?
Yeah. So that Rohan was the most exact expression. Okay. So the thing that we did last class. So that's a nice question. So if you actually write down the expressions that we had last class, no, so basically you're saying these ones, no. I think this one, no. So where is that? So this is the one that you're saying, no. This is the one you're saying, right?
Yes.
See, this is the most exact expression.
Okay.
Okay, there is no, I am not assuming anything here. So this is a general expression for any medium where the k is imaginary. I am not per se saying that this is a metal. This is something where I have both finite, absorption. I mean, where sort of, uh, yeah. So essentially, I am not assuming anything here in this particular expression. Okay, I am just deriving the general expression for some material which has a finite absorption where the k is imaginary. I am not putting any condition there. The condition of metallicity is basically the fact that conduction current is much higher than displacement current, and there I directly go into metal. So it is an interesting exercise to check if this one also will yield that result if you assume that sigma is much greater than epsilon omega. That is actually interesting to see. You can check that. I don't know. You can check that. I
Yes, sir,
may
it keeps.
does it become that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then so great. Then fantastic. If you can, if
It
there
will.
actually becomes that result, then great. Okay, so then the general result is that, and then from there if we can reduce back to that this result, then great. Okay, so let us now. So is that fine? Is your question answered?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let us see the consequences. So what do you, so now we have, so basically we have, let me sort of reduce this. We have expressions for K1 and so what do you think? So this K2 is very nice, right? So what do you think we can infer from there? What great, what really interesting physical phenomena is embedded in K2? Hmm? K2 is the absorption, right? So what? Huh? What? What kind of can you think of? So what is a very crucial parameter for metals? Very crucial, which is related to K2.
The skin depth.
Very good, very good. So the at and how do you think that will be related to K2?
Because the electric field
Order?
is decaying in that part.
Yeah, so exactly. So obviously that is so K2 is related to so K2 is related to absorption, which so which means that this has something to do with the skin depth. But then how do you think it will be related to skin depth?
1 by K2 should be.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So K2 has dimensions of 1 by length, right? Therefore, the skin depth or attenuation length is nothing, it's of the order of 1 by K2,
Sir,
which means of the
can you
order of,
define in depth?
sorry,
Can you define scriptum? We haven't seen that parameter before.
hey, I didn't get it. Again, Rohan, be clearer.
Uh, can you define skin depth?
Oh, define skin depth. So basically, you can say that, see, I have essentially, okay. So skin depth I define as the distance oh, you, at which E becomes E0 become, sorry. Check, can you not reduce the size of this eraser somewhere? It's a huge eraser, no? Or does it depend on the pen? No, but if I switch the pen, it will become anyway. So essentially, where E becomes 1 by E0. Okay. So essentially, that means so this goes as E0 e to the minus K2Z, right? So essentially, where Z is 1 by K2, you get this as 1 by E,
Okay, it
right?
is something like a time constant.
It is very much like time. It is very much like, so, guys, so this is another very interesting thing of physics. So when we, so I think that for Gaussian beams, when we define the beam diameter, you define the beam diameter or beam waist, that is actually nothing but the distance at which the intensity becomes 1 by E square of the maximum intensity. So maybe so essentially for Gaussian beams, oh god. So basically for Gaussian beams, you have something like this, right? And the waist essentially is this, where if this one is something like I0, then the waist omega, or like we say this is 2 omega 0, that is nothing but I0 by E square. The distance at which it goes by 1 by E square. And the maximum intensity ka 1 by E square. Okay. So very similarly, we have the thing of skin depth, where it essentially becomes where the field is exponentially sort of decaying. As decayed, to exponential times less the maximum field value. Okay, 1 by E. Okay, so then this is very important. So essentially you have the skin depth which is given by so basically I'm writing again. So skin depth is defined as root of 2 by mu sigma omega. Acha. So the next thing that we will look at is this thing of velocity. Okay. So what we will look at is the velocity, the phase velocity. What is that given by? Huh? Phase velocity Vp is given by what?
Omega over k.
Very omega over what k?
Q1.
Yes. Acha, these things are very clear to everybody, right? Hopefully. What? Utter silence. K1 is the real part, which is the propagation of the phase. K2 is the imaginary part, which is nothing but the damping or the absorption. These have to be just, embedded inside you. It becomes basically root of 2 omega by mu sigma. Okay. And now, if we now consider the, as we had said, we said that the velocity of the wave inside the metal becomes much smaller than the velocity of light. So let us consider Vp by C, which is Vp by C, which is nothing but root of 2 omega by mu sigma by 1 by root of epsilon mu, right? And that will be what? Tell me how much this is, please, everybody or somebody. What is the answer?
Root 2 omega mu by root 2 omega epsilon by sigma.
Yeah. Correct. And what do we know? That what I wrote gamma, no, sorry. I always deal with gammas in research. See gamma. Anyway. And we know that sigma is much greater than omega epsilon, which means your Vp
Epsilon.
is much lesser than C. So the velocity wave velocity or light velocity inside a metal is much smaller than that in vacuum. Okay. Acha. So actually, let me see. Let us see you do a calculation quickly.
So
Okay.
sigma very greater than omega epsilon.
Oh,
Not sigma again.
sorry. Acha, let me see you do a calculation. So what do you typically so do you have any idea about the magnitude of skin depth? Huh? Do you guys have any magnitude of any idea about how much skin depths typically are? So I'll give you a situation where you have, say, okay, so this is like, okay, so I'm giving a situation where, so calculate skin depth for some copper or something, say, So this is like typically 10 to the power 8, 10 to the power 7 per omega meter. So this is typically in Siemens, or this is the thing of conductivity, the unit of conductivity. So suppose I give you visible, which is around 10 to the power 14 hertz. Okay, and I give you the mu is the permittivity of permeability of free space, which that also I'm giving you. So that is 1.24 e minus 6 some Henry per meter. Tell me what the skin depth is. Calculate and tell me. Tell me quickly. How much is the skin depth? So that I want you guys to have a feeling. What when we talk about skin depth, what actually it means. No, I mean obviously I don't want an exact
10
answer, but
10
you
power
have.
minus 8 meter.
Very good. Everybody did it, or everybody is sleeping out, browsing Facebook or this thing. Huh? No, I hope you're not doing that, because otherwise you would not have done the class at all, right? Because all the recordings are there. You would have just. So I'm happy that at least 25 of you are attending. So absolutely right. This is of the order of 10 to the power minus 8 meter, which typically we write as 10 nanometers. So you can appreciate that this is very, very, very small. Okay. And so again, this is some kind of detail I'm giving. This is approximately equal to 20 atomic sheets. Okay, so this is like 20 atomic layers you have. Typically atomic layers of the order of like some picometer level. Okay, so this is again a tidbit of information which I as an experimentalist think is always very useful. Okay. Okay, so one very important assumption that we are actually having here is that we are using sigma independent of omega. Okay, so what we are basically, again, we are sort of assuming here, we are dealing with the DC value of sigma here, which means sigma is not a function of omega. Okay, and essentially that what we are saying, if you remember the decay of charge, right? We wrote that rho equals rho 0 e to the minus some t by tau or something, right? So we are essentially assuming that this omega tau is 1, where we are actually looking at time scales of so for Cu we are basically looking at time scales of tau is of the order of 2.4 e to the minus 14 seconds. Okay, so essentially that means that one can use this comfortably, I mean this kind of approximation comfortably till the inverse of this comfortably.
Sir, what is tau?
Tau is that decay time, that t by tau, rho 0 e to the t by tau. But we saw the decay of charge, right? You remember the first thing we wrote from the continuity equation,
Oh, okay.
rho equal to rho 0 t by tau. So that collision, so it's like some electron collision time scale. So where the charge decays, so this is, so tau, let me see. So tau is the exponential decay of rho of charge, right? This is the tau. So we can use of sigma comfortably up to around 10 to the power, okay, sort of 12 or 13 hertz. After which, however, this is you have to basically measure. So after that, so beyond this sigma needs to be measured for individual frequencies of excitation. Okay. So, for example, the DC, I can tell you that the DC conductivity value for copper is about 10 to the power 7. So, we used 10 to the power 8 in the previous example for the skin depth, basically because we are considering 10 to the power 14, which is actually optical, which is higher than 10 to the power 12. So, 10 to the power 12, what is this? This is a very important frequency range. Are you aware of this? 10 to the power 12 hertz? Very interesting and a very new field of research as well. What is that?
Terahertz.
Exactly, terahertz frequencies. So at terahertz frequencies, you can assume most metals to have the frequency, I mean, the conductivity, independent of any kind of dispersion effects. Okay. Mhm. So next that we will do is essentially the. So just give me 1 second. I'll switch on the light. Yeah, this is the time of the year where the light, sunlight decays exponentially. So when I was starting at 5 o'clock, it was quite nice, light inside this room, and now suddenly everything has become very dark. Anyway, so the next thing that we are doing essentially is very important. That is the magnetic field calculation. Okay, and this is of course this is very simple again. And what do we use for that? Just nothing but the del cross E equals minus del B del T, which means essentially that I omega B is some I k hat cross E vector, which means that your B is nothing but, so vector B is nothing but k smaller means your B B vector is nothing but k cross k by omega E, right? So then we know that again this is we have all the expressions that we are interested in. What we know then is
Sir, how did you write the second expression? Did you take a Fourier transform?
where this one,
No, about that.
this, but Fourier transform kya Rohan, del T is what? Plane wave equation.
That I got. The right hand
What is
side
the problem?
before the. How
This
do you
one,
get? That part.
this part? No, this is basically the vector k and the scalar. No, I'm saying that the direction this is the k vector and this is the scalar thing. I mean, k has a value, right? K has basically a value, so we know that del cross is ik, which I am writing as I k hat, and del T is nothing but I omega. Is that fine?
Okay, this is Fourier, sir. Fourier integral.
Okay, you can say it's Fourier, but yeah, obviously, if I take a Fourier transform, then yeah, right. I mean, technically, what you're saying, but we have been doing this for a long time, right? Yeah, obviously this is actually Fourier transform. If you go to Fourier space, then obviously del cross is ik. Yeah, correct. But then this is what we are doing from the first day. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a Fourier transform. But I mean, okay. I mean, you can. Yeah. I'm replacing the grad by the vector k.
Okay.
It's just that. Okay. I'm not carrying out an explicit Fourier transform. This is what I'm trying to say. But yes, actually, one should technically, if he wants to be very correct, then you probably should write the things, and the integrands will basically cancel off. But okay, so now we know that your k is nothing but the magnitude of k is nothing but mu this thing 1 plus I, or now it is actually useful to write back in terms of the exponent. And why? Because why do you think I'm writing again in terms of this? Huh?
So that when we multiply with e to the power I omega t minus kz, so it just gets added. The phase gets added.
Correct. Because see, that is what you got to learn also. Which representation you will use when? Because see, now I am going to understand the phase relationship between E and B, which is very, very nice, right? So essentially, I know that K is nothing but K1 plus I K2, right? So essentially, what I'm writing is this is e to the I Kz minus omega t minus pi by 4, right? Which clearly means that B is out of phase by pi by 4 from E. Very nice, right? Very, very nice. Okay, and now comes the more interesting problem. That is, we want to check if, as we had said in one of our assumptions, or like what the intuitions. What was our intuition? That because of the skin depth, the electric field dies very quickly, which means there's a very fast sort of spatial rate of change is very high. As a result, the B has to be high. So that is very easy to now check. Essentially, if you now look at the magnitude of B by E, you remember that. So this is, what will this be? Basically, this is nothing. So you know that B is typically E by C, right? Which means that is E by C mane omega is Ck, right? So that is nothing but omega by K, right? So this is B by E is K by omega. Oh. Correct? Is this clear? Right? Because your B is E by C, and you know that your K, I mean omega equal to Ck, right? So that means C is omega by K, which means B by is K by omega, right? Now just put in the expressions. What is that? So K by omega mane what? Tell me. What K by omega is? Again to complete silence.
Velocity.
But magnitude look, you put this guy, na? Put this guy here. What do you get? You substitute, you have K is nothing but mu omega sigma omega by 2. So this is nothing but mu sigma by
2 omega.
omega by 2 omega, right? And this is obviously again this is extremely which basically means that this value, actually if you calculate it, this actually comes to about 10 to the minus 2 only. And
Sir, hello.
Yeah.
Sir, when you wrote k in terms of exponential, then by 2 factor won't be there, right? because that is
Where,
consumed in
which one?
uh, when
It
you
will not
converted
be
k
there.
to exponential form.
Oh, this one, no?
There.
Yeah, this 2
Yes, sir.
won't be there.
You're absolutely right. Thank you so much. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Very good. You're really paying attention. Thank you very much. Absolutely right. Yes, and this is not there. Very good. Oh, I should just remove this. Very right. That's this whole thing will go looking about this whole thing. Right? Okay. Oh, 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 oh. So basically, for copper, you can act at 1 megahertz. One can easily see that B by E is like 10 to the power 6 by C. Okay, which means that previously it was 1 by C, right? So this is 10 to the minus 2 minus 10 to the power 6 by C, which is actually much. You can understand that the magnitude of the magnetic field has now increased far higher, and we can quantitatively show that compared to the electric field. And so this basically shows that magnitude of B has increased by 10 to the power 6 over that in vacuum. And what we will actually check now is the magnetic and the energies, and that is also very interesting. Okay, energy in the magnetic field. Why is it becoming so soft? Energy in the magnetic field. What is that? Basically, you are trying to calculate UB by UE, say. The ratio now, let us just ask this ratio of magnetic to electric field, magnetic and electric field energies. So what is this? This is nothing but B square by 2 mu, and this one is epsilon E square by 2, which is obviously cancel off, which means this is nothing but B square by E square into 1 by mu epsilon, right? Or we can just replace this omega, I mean this B, as we saw from before. This will essentially give you this B matlab K by this thing, right? So we saw that B by E is K by omega, right? So you can write E into K by omega, right? For B, is that correct? So we can write K square by omega square E square mu by E square epsilon, right? Which is basically nothing but K square by omega square mu epsilon. And now what is K square? Mu sigma omega by 2, correct? Which means what is your UB by UE? UB by UE is what? What?
Sigma by 2 omega epsilon.
Right? Which is, so actually, do you see that the magnetic field energy is more than the electric field energy? This is quite fantastic, right? We actually have more energy, which basically means, let me even highlight this. more energy is being stored in the magnetic field compared to the electric field. And in the, sorry, and what about values for copper? Huh? From this one? Any idea? Huh? We just did it, right? So we just saw क्या आएगा 1 by mu epsilon is nothing but, अरे यही देखो, why are you completely quiet?
The order is almost like 10 times.
Nope. 10 times कहाँ?
10 power 8 divided by 10 power 7, it's 10.
No, see, we just now, what did we see in the last one? We saw that this was E by B was 10 to the power of 6 or something, right? What did we see? The B by E was 10 to the power minus 2, right? And this is like C squared. Yeah, you're right. This is of the order of, right, 10 to the power 10. Correct. So did everybody understand? We just now saw that this was 10 to the power minus 2 and this is actually C squared. Oh, no, this is 10 to, no, you're not right. This is C square, right? So C square means 10 to the power 16. Correct? What? Array? So B again complete. So can I not write this? From what we saw in the last line, last thing, we wrote this, right? We got 10 to the power 6. B by E we got as 10 to the power 6 by C, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes,
So
sir.
then this is of the order of 10 to the power 12. Is remarkable, right? It is quite remarkable. You have 10 to the power 12 times higher energy. I mean, the amount of energy stored in the magnetic field is this much higher than that in the electric field. This is a fantastic result for metals. So the last part that we will look at, and that I will again leave as an assignment to you, and that is very nice, that is very easy to do, that is reflection, reflectivity of metals. So metals look shiny, right? Right? So this is what we had sort of surmise. So again, to make things simple, I'm going to assume for normal incidence R equals N1 minus N2 by N1 plus N2 normal incidence, and consider N1 as 1, that is air. Okay. So then what does R become? That means R becomes nothing but 1 minus N2 by 1 plus N2, and your N2 is nothing but Ck by omega. Is that fine? Right? What? V by C, right? Anna?
Yes.
The C by V, C by
Yes,
V,
sir.
sorry, C by V. C by V. Right? So then on you have K equals K1 plus K2, then your I K2, then your, which implies that R equal to 1 minus, if I say Ck by omega and 1 plus Ck by omega. So you have to now show that R mod R is close to 1. Given all this is very easy to do. Okay, this is the next assignment and this can be done by Monday. It's very simple. Just you need to write this here, then you basically have to just do a simplification. And of course, very important is you have to use adequate assumptions. That is basically order of magnitude assumptions. If you have something which is extremely, something is very smaller than something, you can assume that. We just now saw some very crucial, thing. I mean, what we actually saw in today's class, certain things we saw, right? About the magnitude of some objects being very small than some other objects. Okay, so those you should use, because remember, physics finally is nothing but the, at one level, it just becomes the judicious use of assumptions, judicious use of, assumptions which are defendable, and which portray physical reality while not violating any mathematics or any physical laws. That is very crucial, and that is what you have to understand how to use. So you will basically, very easy. It's just a 3-4 line, 5-6 line solution. Okay, and we will give you the thing. I'll put it. Because I think it is necessary that you guys keep on calculating and being in tune with the course. Okay, so let me unshare and stop presenting and maybe show myself. So yeah, so any questions for what we did today?
Sir,
Huh.
so when you define skin depth, you said it's basically inversely proportional to K2,
Yes,
right? Yeah, so
correct.
once you have the value of K2, you already have the idea how much absorption will be there. So I didn't get what was the point of defining skin depth. Like there isn't
No,
any
no.
new physics coming out of it.
Well, new physics. See, Hitesh, the basic thing is, see, whenever you do any kind of, when you do any physics, quantification is very important, right? What we are doing is nothing but a quantification. Why do you think a Gaussian beam diameter is important? I mean, a Gaussian beam is a Gaussian beam. Why do you want to know the thing? And see, what is crucial is, whenever you do, see, the physics does, skin depth is no real physics. The physics is, there is attenuation, there is very strong attenuation. Skin depth is a measure of that. So if you are saying that measurement is not important in physics, that is wrong, right? I mean, you appreciate that
No,
yourself
sir,
as
I'm
well.
not saying that. Like you said,
Ah,
for the beam diameter, you talked
ah,
about the D, but D is a
right.
fundamental quantity, so that is important.
No, but
But
this is fundamental quantity means here. No, but why do you think it's a fundamental quantity?
fundamental quantity in the sense
It's a
that like you
property of the
can't
beam. It's a
break it
property
down
of the beam.
further. But
Yeah,
the
it's a
skin
property
depth
of,
is
no, I can
basically
break,
1 by
no, no,
K.
that is not correct. Hitesh, I can take the beam and focus it and it will become smaller. I can just use a, put it on an edge mirror, and that also will break up the beam. Of course, I can break the beam. Who said I cannot? Definitely, I can break the beam. Here also, it's a fundamental property of the metal, right? Copper and iron and aluminium and silver and gold will not have the same values of skin depth. That is
Yeah,
very
because
important.
they will not have same value of K2. That's the point.
Yeah. Of course, skin depth has no new physics, but it is basically an understand. It's a quantity which has importance in characterizing a metal. And if you are saying that characterization, what is the importance?
No,
Are
no,
you
sir. That
then?
is. I'm not going any further than that.
Ha
Like I'm
ha.
just
That
saying
that is
that
fine.
it's just
That I
inverse
agree.
of K2.
There is no
So
new physics. There is no new physics. Completely
yeah,
agree. I agree. I totally agree. No new physics. It's a characterization of the material. But characterization accounts for, I think, 50% of publications in physics. That also I can tell you.
yeah, that is fine. You can also do the characterization if you just know the K2. That is
Right,
fine.
right. If you know the K2,
Sir,
but
one
yeah, no. But another thing, Hitesh, you need not, so if you measured the conductivity and, epsilon, mu, sigma, all that, that will tell you how fast the wave will decay. So you need not measure the skin depth. By measuring these properties of the metal, you can actually predict how fast or by what physical distance the wave will decay inside the medium. Bishwajit, you wanted to add something?
Yes, sir. So we have done the calculation for high conducting limit. No? When sigma is very greater than.
Greater than epsilon
They
omega.
can
Right.
check. They can check one thing that when sigma is comparable to that epsilon 0 omega, and check what happens. There will be an interesting thing.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
So,
Very nice. So actually,
they can
we
get
see
the-
when we do the dispersion thing, we will be anyway doing all this. But then you can
No,
preempt
means,
this. Yeah, I mean, actually, what I
if you
think
take-
Vishwajit is saying, Vishwajit, correct me if I am wrong, but I think what you are saying, I'll share the screen again for a bit. Just share again. So I think. So basically, you are saying that if I have this, right, Vishwajit? Vishwajit, are you there? Hello there.
Yes, sir, I am here.
So I'm
Hello,
trying
sir.
to say that if you actually assume this one, okay, this is basically no assumption here. If I don't assume that this is greater, see, this is a very nice thing that Vishwajit is saying. I think, guys, we can actually extend the assignment till Thursday. And what maybe we can do is repeat the whole calculation by not. So here, what we are doing is we are expanding this guy. I mean, we are sort of assuming this to be much larger than 1 and just get going ahead. If we don't assume this, and maybe we, sort of do a sort of a Fourier, a binomial expansion and keep certain terms,
Yes.
right? And
no,
then
sir,
see.
I'm saying you will get interesting thing for only K2 because that K2 is omega. You can check that.
But no, but what do you want them to assume?
That
I mean,
you can
what
say
value of K2 do you
comparable
want
to
to
that
take?
quantity.
See, because sorry, come again.
Epsilon omega or something.
No, I missed some part.
Hello, sir.
Tell me.
Sigma
Hello.
is comparable to epsilon omega.
Okay, but then see that if you assume, then that first, so you have to, that's what you have to assume the whole expression, right? In the sense that we have sort of ignored. See, if you are not using that assumption, basically that means, see, if you are not assuming this thing, then you are basically saying to have this whole thing.
No, you don't have to come to this. You can just use that definition that K2 equals to omega.
That's what I'm saying. That first expression.
Yes.
That first expression, right? That is what I'm saying. So
and what do you do?
Wait, let me go back 1 minute. 1 minute. Where do you go? This one. Not this one. This one, no? Yeah, this one, right? This one. This one, right?
Yes, for K2 you will get something for K2.
Of course, you can solve this from K2. Basically, I put K1 here. You can do the same thing for K2, and you will get something. So basically, K2 you will just do mu this 1 by this into mu sigma omega sigma.
That plus minus 1. That minus 1 is K2.
The
whole thing will be there. After the root, there will be minus 1. That is K2.
Correct. No, but are you saying that? But this root thing you want them to keep?
No, that root thing you said, no, that binomial expansion. Then
that's what I'm saying. Exactly. You do binomial expansion and you keep up to second term, maybe, no?
Yes, up
or
to
just
second
first
term.
term. Keep up to second term. Nice. Okay, great.
Yeah,
So to actually put this as an this thing. Bolo? Yeah, tell me.
If sigma and epsilon omega are comparable, how can we do the binomial expansion? It has to be much smaller than 1 so that I can
actually means comparable means I am taking that this is not so good conductor. Take it like that. Means sigma is
no, it is
less or
ulta.
near.
So Rohan, what he's saying is it is ulta. So he's saying that no, if 1 plus x has to be small. No,
Yes, yes, yes.
he's saying that ulta. He's saying that this
Okay,
is
okay.
actually large. Rohan, epsilon omega is large.
Ah, got it. Got it.
Got it, no?
Yes.
So that's an interesting thing.
And one more thing, for K2, it won't be just one minus thing. This will be this whole root of one minus. It will be in the
No, no.
denominator.
No.
Yeah,
Then
maybe.
you are wrong maybe.
So if you see
No.
equation 1 at the top, it is K2 is some proportional by 1 by K1. So that root sign will go in the denominator.
Yeah, that is
Check
right.
that actually. And
We have to check. No, but I think simplifying it, you probably we can get that. So
we can do the binomial expansion.
yeah, you
That
can
is-
do an thing and then check that you probably will get a simple kind of thing. Okay, so basically what we are saying is,
and find out that K2 is not depend on omega.
yeah, it will actually
K2
not
will
depend
not
on
depend
omega.
on omega.
It will stop not
Right.
depend. That is correct.
because
this
there
will
is a
cancel.
omega
There's omega
outside.
outside. Correct,
Ah.
correct.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I mean, one can see how everything, how the magnetic field, everything what we did today, group the phase velocity. By the way, guys, one thing important that we need to point out is that here actually this VP, VG are same because we are not assuming a pulse or something. It's a single wave. So whatever I did, that is actually the group velocity also stands. Okay, I'm not using a pulse. So the group velocity, phase velocity actually are the same. Okay, so that can be an interesting thing where we repeat the calculation that we did today. So essentially find out the group velocity and the magnetic field energies and all. If you have finite absorption, but not conductivity, but not conduction. You understand, right? There is finite absorption, but so how does absorption play a role in modifying the sort of properties
My internet got something, but
Yeah, something is wrong with
It could
first
be the
connection.
problem of her side. Yes.
I got thrown out fantastically. This has been the first time this has happened. So anyway, so what I was going to say was the next class we will look at absorption by dielectric media. I mean, sorry, dispersion properties of materials. So we will start with dielectric media, and we will basically show that you have. So here, what we saw, as I was saying, that you have absorption as a consequence of the sigma being quite large. The k basically changes, becomes imaginary. But for any material, if you come with an excitation wavelength or excitation light, which has wavelength which is close to the electron absorption wavelength, even for bound electrons, then you have sort of near that wavelength, you have very, very interesting phenomena. So we will touch that, and then of course move to even more intriguing properties. Things like Kramer's chronic and all that, but that will take time. Okay, okay, guys. I hope the recording. Okay, chalo, bye. See you next week, Monday.